In this particular series of videos, I've tried to address why people might not want to believe in a Judeo-Christian kind of God, a monotheistic God who is not only the creator of the physical cosmos, but also a supreme moral God, a God all good. And that's the part I think that most people actually have a problem with. A scientific person can look at the Big Bang and the incoherence surrounding that and say, well, there still has to be something beyond that to get the whole show going. But how can God be all good when we see so much misery and suffering in the world? The previous video that I did to this one was a discussion of sin, if you will, of the choices that we make our lives miserable. And those choices are precisely, in most cases, maybe in all cases really, choices that flow from our deciding that, well, there isn't a supreme moral being in control of anything, so there's this big gap in the arrangement of things, and I'll fill it up. I mean, someone has to do it. I'll say what's right and wrong. And that's when we really get into trouble. That stirs up all kinds of misery for ourselves or for other people around us. So I think so that's really not a very good reason for not believing in a supreme moral being. It's precisely when we don't have that figure, that higher ideal to inspire us, that we get into such deep, deep trouble. So in this follow-up, I wanted to deal with more basic questions just about, say, aging and death, which we don't really need sin to explain. I know the Adam and Eve story. I'll get to that in just a second, but I'm kind of just today, this morning, I'm struggling a little bit because I didn't sleep very well last night. I didn't sleep well because of a problem that's age-related that is probably going to get worse. I don't know that it'll ever get much better. And I can see how people going through this kind of thing would say, why did God make this happen to me? Why did he set us up this way? Why do we have to go through this? Why can't we just, like the golden age that Hesiod talks about, why can't we just, in our prime, lie down and not wake up again? Why do we have to go through this misery? And that's what I want to talk about in the next few minutes. Now, okay, the Adam and Eve story says the reason we have disease, aging, and death is because Adam and Eve disobeyed God. They ate of the apple, and the wages of sin is death. Not only for them, but for their progeny. All of us ever after, because Adam and Eve sinned, God told them what would happen, and so they broke the bargain, and the rest of us have to pay for it. Look, I am not going to pursue this series by trying to sell whatever viewers I have on some kind of hardline, inflexible reading of the Bible. The people whom I most respect, and I'm a Christian, and the Christians that I know who believe as I do, this has been going on, by the way, for at least since the time of St. Augustine. The church fathers read the Old Testament in particular and would allegorize the stories and explain them in some deeper sense. I'm not going to try to do that with the Adam and Eve story, but there are at least half a dozen ways that you could do that that would make morally coherent sense. It makes no sense at all to say that if you break your word to me and really get me upset about that I'm going to take it out on your child and on your grandchild. In fact, that's morally outrageous. If you crippled my brother in a hit-and-run accident, and 20 years later your child comes to me for a job, and I hire your son because he doesn't know what my relationship is to you, but I know who he is, and so I'm going to give him all kinds of risky, dangerous tasks to perform and probably get him killed as an act of vengeance. Well, that's really, that's evil, isn't it? I mean, it's kind of like Shakespeare's Iago or something. That's despicable. Why would we project that kind of motivation on the supreme moral being? The Adam and Eve story, to me, has to make sense at some deeper level than that. And I'm really, personally, I'm not a fan of that kind of inflexible reading of the Bible. So I'm not going to go there. What I want to do with you is actually, first of all, share a chain of thoughts that I don't think I've heard anywhere else. And let's just imagine that we could be immortal in the flesh in this world. Let's just remove not only death, but even disease and discomfort. Guys like Ray Kurzweil, they tell us, Kurzweil and others, these prophets of the age of artificial intelligence, tell us that we may be at the dawn of such an age. We could be infused with nanobots, millions of them, that would repair muscle damage and nerve damage and immediately eradicate any kind of invading bacterium, and just we could fall off a cliff and the little nanobots would immediately be cleaning things up and revive us. So let's say that we could live, if not forever, then hundreds of thousands of years. Think about that. How happy would you be? Would you be happy then because you're not going to get sick and you're not going to die? One thing that immediately occurs to me is that I wouldn't have the experience of fatherhood, which is probably the single most important, meaningful, rewarding experience that I have ever had in this world. We wouldn't be fathers and mothers because we wouldn't need children, because we would quickly overpopulate, because none of us would be dying and making room. Or you could say, well, we'd be populating new planets out there in different solar systems. Okay, well, but we could make those in a lab, like Huxley's Brave New World. We wouldn't need to inflict the pain of childbearing on women, since we're removing all pain from human existence. So no more close bonding as in parent and child. All of that's gone. We would also never have an experience that really required us to long and to suffer and to incur risk. Think of something, one of the most, say, elevating experiences of your life might have been climbing up to a mountaintop, and you look out there and the sun is setting, the clouds are turning gold and red, the shadows on this vast landscape below you are growing by the mile every minute, it seems like, and the first stars are coming out, and you're never going to forget that. That's just unbelievably beautiful, and it awakens something inside of you. Except, if you're going to live for 500,000 years, heck yeah, you're going to forget it. You're going to forget it after the first 10,000 probably. How are you not going to forget stuff like that? It's not even just a matter of mentally. I guess if you have memory nanobots in your head, you could remember everything, but it's not going to have the meaning to you, because you're not going to, the risk of slipping off the mountain as you climb is nil. You're going to be immediately repaired. And what kind of longing or sense of the beyond would that vision awaken in you when you know that there's nothing confining you temporally? You can virtually live forever. What you don't do today, you can do tomorrow. Where you don't get to today, you can get to tomorrow. Spatially too, because you have infinite time, you have infinite space. There are no parameters compressing you and making you feel the poignancy of life on this earth. Because we have, all of us right now, due to our mortality, we have this hourglass that's been turned upside down, and the sand is immediately trickling through when we're born. Once we come of age, we realize that. And so we have to prioritize our lives. We have to make choices about what's more important to us. we can't do this and that and that and that. We have to pick the things that are most valuable, and we have to dedicate ourselves to them. This teaches us value. It teaches us what's beautiful. It teaches us what's good. Think if you were one of these super biorobotic hybrid beings, you could be like a punk on a video game and just go out and kill 5,000 people just for the amusement of it, and no harm, no foul, because they're all infused with nanobots too, and they can come back to life. So you're not even learning the most basic strictures of moral behavior. You're because you're not contained in the box of mortality. You're not having to make choices. You're not having to realize that there has to be something higher, something beyond, something that's in you but not fully of you right now in this material setting, something that makes you reach beyond and aspire more highly. Your spiritual dimension is gone. Your spiritual dimension is just gone. But God, by giving us mortality, and I'm trying to say to you that mortality is actually a gift. By giving us mortality, He allows us to learn about values, to discover that spiritual side of us which is awakened by our material experiences, but which is also forced through the compression of those material experiences to reach out beyond. In my discussions about art, maybe if you saw that, you kind of remember that I was saying the same thing. The essence of art is to make us feel something that's more than the sum of its parts. It's to make us understand that full reality is beyond what we can see with our eyes and hear with our ears. Let me, excuse me, let me say one other thing as I run out of time here. This is just wild, I know, but maybe I have some of these fantasies because I do realize that human beings suffer immensely. I've been trying to wade through Solzhenitsyn's Gulag Archipelago recently, and I'll tell you, it's a tough read. I'm not going to read the whole book at one time because I'm going to take a break after I finish book 2, because it's just too much. It's just overpowering when you realize, especially in the late, not so great 20th century, how many millions and tens of millions of people were slaughtered by Hitler and Stalin and Mao and Pol Pot and the whole thing. It's really hard just to, and it's kind of stupid and morally objectionable to put blinders over your eyes and not see that and insist that so life is for those who believe. It's happy. There's no suffering. Well, you can't be stupid enough not to see all the misery that's happening. So what I do is a kind of a mental exercise. Think of it as a kind of prayer, if you will. I guess I do. I have lately been imagining to myself the worst case scenario for an old guy like me living out here in the sticks. Let's say that somebody, a home invader, kicks in my window at midnight and he forces me out into the yard and tells me to lie face down. He takes everything out of the house that he wants. Then he comes out and he points the gun at me and says, okay, I've got what I want. Now I'm going to pull your plug. And I say, well, why? You got a load of stuff to carry off. You don't need to kill me, do you? Well, you've seen me. Well, it's dark. I haven't seen you. You're okay. Well, I enjoy killing people. It's a thrill. It's a high. So I'm going to kill you anyway. And so he fills me full of holes and drives off. And I'm bleeding out. And I'm not going to have enough blood to carry oxygen to my brain very quickly. And very soon I'm just going to check out. And I'm lying there looking up at Orion and the Milky Way. But I've been through this horrible, traumatic experience that so many millions of people have unfortunately been through in our sick world. And how can I say that my life has been satisfying and rewarding at that moment of death, when the moment of death itself is such an outrage and such a frightful, traumatic event? You know what? I think as long as I was staring up at those stars, the stars would still be beautiful. I think that I could still realize that what had just happened was just a key turning on a door that would open, and I mean, I'm going to have to die somehow anyway. And so is that guy who just killed me. He thinks he's Superman because he's got a gun. But he may get shot, he may die in a traffic accident, he may live to be 98 and die of a heart attack in bed, but he's not going to be that far behind me. And when he checks out and enters the higher space, there's not going to be any room for him because he rejected God. And he didn't look up at the stars and see anything. His spirit, he murdered his own spirit as he was murdering his fellow human beings around him. I feel secure that I have that higher reality waiting for me. I'm not afraid of whatever suffering I have to go through to get there. I'm not afraid that the suffering is going to deprive me of entering that higher reality. Suffering's not going to do that. Suffering could be very, very bad, but it'll end, and I'll get through to the place where everything will begin to make perfect sense. The people who impose the suffering, many of them are not going to have that power any longer. That's my confidence, that's my faith. Someone who says, well, but I'm living in this world and I don't understand how suffering in this world could be allowed by this supposedly benign fatherly creator. How do you do that to your children? And I'm telling that person, if you have faith, you realize that there's infinitely more beyond this that completely indemnifies you for all the misery here and now. And this person comes back with, yeah, but look at all the suffering here and now. And you see, this is a closed circle. I've offered my answer. This is the only answer I can make, and I think it's a perfect answer, but those who don't have faith, who don't have ears, cannot hear. They don't have faith and they don't understand. And I hope that they will. I hope that they do. I hope that they can.